Embrace your style to be marvelous. It's your time to be fabulous. Make that choice. You want a real happiness.
Hi, hello, and welcome to SOULMARY Real Talk. This is the only multicultural talk show in Switzerland. Today I have a very special guest. She's from New York and she's been traveling. She's a photographer. She's a multimedia journalist and she's Caribbean. And today I'm very happy to welcome you people, Pearl Bäni. Hi, Pearl. Nice to meet you.
Marietta.
Thank you so much for coming.
To be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh.
I mean, did you miss the flight from New York? Or?
No, not really. I'm always, if it's Swiss, it's always on time.
So you're always on time.
I'm always on time, yeah.
So, I mean, hi, first of all, thank you so much for coming into my show.
Pleasure.
And it's nice to have you here.
Yes.
I mean, we know each other a little bit because you've been supporting me by Black Art Matter.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you did also some picture that we just also had together, a little board that we had to do. So I have a question. So how did you came actually to Switzerland?
Really, what happened was I had a friend who visited New York from Switzerland. Her cousin, myself and her cousin, was we were really best friends. And he was an actor. They say was because he passed. And I asked her about Switzerland, Europe, and what happened in between that time. She says, oh, you can come anytime, come visit, you know. So what happened in between that time, my friend, at the time, my very best friend, she passed also. Mm-hmm. And she was a stewardess, and she used to travel a lot. And she met this designer in Paris, and the designer, she kind of, you know, thought about me, and she asked him, would it be good, you know, because I did study fashion design, would it be okay if I do an apprenticeship at,
let me ask you something very interesting about your life story. So how did you grow up? Did you grow up in Caribbean? I don't know, it's like you were in London. It's like you have a very interesting, you've been traveling around. You were in London and then you went back to New York and then you have Caribbean blood. So can you explain us just that we know a little bit who you are?
Oh, sure. What will happen is my parents, my mom and my dad, they, both of them, well, my dad actually, because my mom, she didn't want to leave her home. Mm-hmm. She was so in love with her home. Mm-hmm. And my dad traveled to Aruba. Mm-hmm. He was actually stalking my mom.
Okay.
he was a good friend of my mother's brother. Yeah. And so he was always asking, you know, they used to make up these fake meetings so that my father could meet my mother. Okay. And my mom was this woman who like, well, if you want to meet me, you must talk to my parents. Okay. You know, so that was like the whole thing. And my father went to Aruba to work. Because most Caribbean people, they leave their home for working. I mean, who leaves paradise, you know, if you... And so my father went to Aruba, and my mom, he proposed to my mother, and my mother also went over, and she got married. They got married in Aruba, and but they are Grenadians.
Okay, so you moved to New York. You went to England, and then you moved to New York.
Yeah.
And from New York, you came to Switzerland.
Yeah. Well, what happened was when we left Aruba, I was like 4 years old when we left Aruba. And Grenada it has 3 different sister islands or 4 different sister islands, and one of these islands is called Carriacou.
Okay.
And so what happened is Grenada is the main island where everything happens: courts, hospitals, better schools, you know. And so my godmother, who lived in the main island, on the main island, she asked my mom, you know, hey, can I take Pearl? Because my godmother had no children. And so my mother thought, oh, that would be a great, opportunity because of the schools and you know. So this is how it happened. I went to Grenada with my godmother, and my godmother decided, her husband was in England, and he sent for her to come to England.
Yeah.
And she asked my mom, do you mind if Pearl go with me to England?
Okay. And from England, you went back to America?
From England, I went back. We went back to the Caribbean for a couple of months because we were all going to the States. Because my father was already in the States, you know, and that's the way it works. That the man goes first, he finds a job, finds well, what we now call an apartment. And
then, I mean, when you were living in New York, you were in the time of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. This was a movement, like, this is like a nice picture of New York. So you can feel a bit comfortable. With New York around your back. So, I mean, you were in the time when Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and the civil rights was going on. So how was it for you as a black woman to be involved a little bit in it?
Well, being in a Caribbean, coming from a Caribbean family, my parents always, they were kind of overprotected. Don't get in trouble. Don't join that. Don't do this. You know, but my parents had a Caribbean mentality, and Caribbean people, they come to the States. They come for education. They come to work. You know, and they either, the first generation always go back home. Maybe the second and the third, they stay in the, you know, in America.
So that's mean you were not really was like involved in these civil rights and civil.
Yes, I was I was involved, but without my parents knowing, because my parents didn't want us. They feel that, oh, you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get arrested, you're going to get this, you know. And I was involved. I was involved in the protests. We had special clothing to prove that we are for the cause. You know, we wore the colors. We wore the very huge afros. You know, I mean, and so it was at the time claiming our identity, really. You know, because it was somehow being lost. And so Martin Luther King, who felt we should do this non-violently, and there were other leaders who were in the movement, different groups who felt, you know, different, you know. But Martin Luther King kept the peace, basically. And so this was the time. Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, which is now vindicated because they had such a bad name before, you know, such a, you know, they were vilified, you know, and now they're, that's not the truth anymore.
So you started, I heard like you went to, in Harlem, there were like Schoenberg. You started Black History a little bit for yourself? Well,
Black History was already, I started it already in school because it was not taught in our schools in America. We fought for it. You know, we fought, we said we want this history being taught. That was in my time. And when that time came up, I was in high school.
Yeah, that's the time you start modeling, I think. You start also.
Yeah, I started.
You were a model too.
Yes, so I modeled too. I modeled too, but I didn't actually model in high school. I modeled, it was like my last year of school in high school, and because I went to a fashion school.
Okay. Strictly
fashion design school, which is very well known in New York.
So when did the time start when you were
I think it was my last year. Modeling? I think it was my last year. What happened is I had a little part-time job after school. And I was walking. It was, you know, it was definitely the 60s. We wore bell-bottom dresses, you know. And I'll never forget, I had on this purple dress with lace, blah, blah, blah. And I'm walking down street, and this guy stopped me, and he was already a top model.
Yeah.
You know, top model. He stopped me and he says, "Hey, have you ever modeled?" And I said, "No." You know, he says, "Come with me. I'm going to Ophelia DeVore." Ophelia DeVore was a black model agency. And so I said, "I'm not going with you nowhere." He says, "Don't worry, the elevator is full of people." Blah. And he took me to Ophelia DeVore, and she was pleased and everything, but I was underage, and which means my parents had to sign, and my mother didn't want to.
Okay.
She felt, you know, my parents, they wanted doctors, lawyers, you know, or even nurses if you can, but modeling was not on their agenda. And so I started being more into it, you know, after I kind of moved out of my parents' house. I was very independent. And
so then you went as a model, you went to Paris. I mean,
yeah.
You have like a picture, like,
This is in New York.
This is in New York.
This is in New York, yes.
Your model career.
This is in New York, you know.
Okay.
But I was also doing it behind my parents' back.
Ah, so they didn't know about it?
They had, no, because they didn't want to have anything to do with that. They honestly didn't. So I was also modeling, but with their values.
Okay.
With their values, you know, because in this industry, you really get confronted with a lot of not so nice situations. And if you don't have the values that you were brought up with, you can get into a lot of promised stuff.
Yeah. So how was it as a black woman? So how was it for you
as a black woman? You know, back in those days, it wasn't that easy for us. You know, and if you, and most of the time, they always try to manipulate it where they look for girls of a lighter skin. You know what I mean? And I remember there was an agency called Black Beauty. And I'm actually friends of one of the founders right now. Okay. And when you went to this agency, it was mostly lighter skinned women, you know. And I must be honest with you, now that I know, you know, it wasn't even their fault. It was their agency. They would not have made money if they didn't give the industry what they wanted, you know.
So what made you actually come to Switzerland? I heard it was love.
No, it wasn't.
It was not love?
No, it wasn't.
Okay, what was it?
No, it wasn't. I didn't need love to come here, you know. I mean, what happened was I came through as this friend I told you about that I met in New York. She lived here. And I asked her about Switzerland. She said, "Oh, it's a nice place. You should come. If you're going to Paris, you know, you can come and then go on the train to Paris." That's how all of that happened. And I did come, and I think the second evening I was here, through another person who is my friend now, wasn't my friend before, I met my husband. And she kept saying, "Go talk to him, go talk to him." You know, and I'm like, I don't need to go talk to nobody. You know, I had that U.S. mentality. You know, and I mean, what do I need to go talk to him for? For what? You know, like that. You know, but it turned out we all got into his car and went to the reggae club. Yeah. And so the girls who I knew, they said, "Oh, sit in the front." Like, because they already knew who he was, right? Because, you know, if they hang out at the same place, they all know each other. So she said, "I'll sit in the front." So while I was sitting there, he says, "Why are you here?" And I says, "Oh, I'm passing through. I'm also modeling. I'm going to Paris to do an apprenticeship in fashion design." He says to me, "Well, here in Switzerland, it doesn't work anymore." Yeah. He did. He says, "I think you better go back to New York."
But you didn't went back to New York.
No.
And you started a little bit like, I mean, it's like we just had like this movement like in the Black Lives Matter. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, because how was it for you? Because everything, I mean, was changing about George Floyd death,
Yeah.
and people was going out on the street to protest. And
Yeah.
did you work with pictures? You shot some pictures
Yeah.
for Black Lives, for Black Art Matter.
Black Art Matters.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I personally, I mean, when Black Lives always matter in my case, or in our case. It's just other people didn't know our lives matter.
Yeah.
You know, so this whole George Floyd situation ignited, you know, it's like enough, enough. And it was a pleasure to have been one of the photographers to show my pictures in the first Black Art Matters in Switzerland.
Yeah, it was the biggest Black art exhibition.
Yes, it was the
all over
largest
the world.
and worldwide.
Yeah.
And I am honored to have been a participant, you know, of this particular, and the Black culture.
Yeah.
That was at the photo shoots. That was also
a Black culture movement.
Yes.
That's the first thing that
Yes,
you
that
did,
was the first. Yes.
So you had and
Yeah.
then you came also like in the magazine because of Black Art Matters, because you was one of the photographers.
Yes.
It was amazing.
Yeah. And it was COVID.
Yeah, it was COVID.
So none of the photographers can really come. I was basically, I think I was the only one from the States here.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
think, and we had some Obama photographer.
Yes.
Yes,
yeah,
he was also there. So we had
Yeah.
great American photographer.
Yeah, we had some great stuff.
And it was really the biggest contemporary photographer.
Yes, it was the largest.
Shows for the Black people all over the world. So how was it for you, like, to be a part of this movement? You
To
know?
be a part of the Black art movement here in Switzerland, especially this one that we did last year.
Yeah.
I'm chills that I'm talking about it right now, because it wasn't just art. It was bringing people together. You know, that's when you saw, oh my gosh, there's so many. Is there that many people of color in Switzerland? And I saw some of my old friends that I haven't seen in years. You know, so it was the coming together. It was the whole way it was planned and set up. We had this living room, which was really nice, you know, and the film room, you know, it was fabulous.
And then you had also like a friend of you, Viola. She was
my friend, was able to show her art.
Yeah, she's from New Orleans, or where she's from?
She's from New Orleans. She's from New Orleans, and
she's a great painter.
She's a painter. She comes from that world. Her brother is a big photographer in New Orleans. He's very famous, and she does good work.
So you think like to be a photographer, you think like working as a photographer, is that something like you can change the world with it? Like, I mean, I see your picture of Muhammad Ali. You shot that picture.
Yes, I did.
Amazing.
I shot this picture a long time ago.
A long time. So, I mean, Muhammad Ali was also fighting for the civil rights.
Oh, he was always.
So I think like, so you think with your job or with photographer, or you can change the world a little bit?
I think that photography is one of the elements that can change the world. You know, I think everyone with an idea, and if you are willing to see that we do need change, you know, you make the effort. And photography is one of those, one of the branch of art that you can do this with, because without photography, George Floyd's situation would not have been so exposed.
So what means for you to be Black?
Oh, very well.
You always say long story, keep it short.
I know. I grew up in those days where where the phrase was coined, hell no, I'm Black and I'm proud. You know, and I grew up in those times, and I am very fortunate, I think, to be born as a Black woman, because I feel that to be able to go through what I've been through as a black woman, and it will help me change the world. You know what I mean? Because I feel with the people of color, we are always, always fingers pointed at us for some reason or the other. And I think it will make people aware of their own heart, you know?
Count.
And to know that they are also suffering, you know.
So what is your, how can you support black women in Europe or Switzerland to be more self-confident? So
I think, you know, to self-confidence comes in many. I think if you were brought up not to love yourself as well, whether you're black, white, or whatever, if you were brought up not to love yourself, you know, is when you run into this self-confidence problem. And self-confidence, I think most people have self-confidence, but I believe that it's the environment that shapes them. You know, if you live in an environment where you are always being in a situation where you are the, it's funny, the word in English, minderheid. What is that word in English? You know?
So this is a beautiful picture. I love this picture. What was this picture?
This is a show in Brooklyn.
Okay.
The Brooklyn Fashion Week. And this picture was done long before COVID. You know? The mask, you know? And yeah.
That's a very, I love the diamonds and I love all this happening.
Bradley.
So I heard like, I mean, you look like a very balanced person. You look like very like,
thank you.
Stressful. So how did you keep yourself balanced? Do you meditate or do you do something special?
Well, you know, when I came to Switzerland and I saw, my gosh, this country is so beautiful and wow, you know, wow. But I noticed that the people themselves were not really smiling, you know, and I'm like, you know, back in Brooklyn, it doesn't matter what's going on. We're like laughing and joking.
We always have fun.
Yeah, we always have fun. Even if we make fun of each other, you know, we have fun. So I also had a lot of name calling happened with me here. And I felt, my goodness, these people they have everything. And then I was looking at also the social issues, you know, that was going on within the society. And I says, well, why do they have all these problems, you know, if they have everything, you know? And I said, this is a beautiful country. They should be happy, you know, they should be laughing every day.
So are you practicing something? So
I am. And this is what led to it, basically. Because I said, you know, if people are not happy, what is it with all of this? What is it? So one day I said to myself, you know what? If this is what the world is all about, you know, I think when I leave, I don't think I want to come back here.
So are you Buddhist?
I am, and that's when I met Buddhism. Okay. I met Buddhism around exactly in that moment when I said this. I was on my way to a cosmetologist, and she introduced me to Buddhism, and I have been practicing Buddhism ever since, because I felt this is very realistic.
So how can people understand like what kind of Buddhism? I think I heard like you're doing the same thing like Tina Turner is doing, like you.
Yeah, we practice. Actually, I practice Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism, which is the same as Tina, but I don't know if I was practicing before Tina or after Tina. I have no idea. I did read her story, and when she did her movie, we were invited at a private showing. I think it was What Love Got to Do with It. Yeah. But I took on this philosophy because it helped me to bring peace to all of what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
And how to deal with that
Problems.
piece, with those problems, you know? And I find that it's a practice that is more realistic. For me, I'm not criticizing anyone else's philosophy, but it works for me, you know? We chant. We chant, and I'm pretty sure you probably even heard Tina on, I think she was on Larry King, and that's our practice, you know? It's a phenomenal practice because it's a practice that you actually, you know, you cannot be practicing something if you don't have actual proof.
Yeah.
You know?
Is this something
You
like
know?
you practice like every week or every day?
No,
or
we practice, our rituals, not rituals, basically rituals, but what we do is we have a prayer that we say in the morning and the same prayer we say in the evening.
So,
and we chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Okay, can you just do it a little bit?
Just to chant, or
just to chant so people can just.
Okay, we in the morning we have a scroll, and it's called a Gohonzon, and this scroll is a manifestation of your life, basically. And so we start chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and then we have a liturgy that we say, and it's the liturgy starts with Myoho Renge Kyo, Hoben Pondani, Niji Sazanju Sanmayanjo Niki Go. So we say this, but just practicing Buddhism is not enough. We have to know, what are we practicing?
So then I have
we have a mentor.
Last question that I have to ask you. It's
Yes.
a very interesting moment. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, we could be talking ages and hours, but time is running. And so if you could have 3 wishes, what would be your wish?
Well, the first one is health, you know, because I feel that I'm very healthy for my age. The second one is, oh my goodness me, health, that I have the fortune to basically be with my family. You know, I think family is important. And the third one is financial stability.
Oh, thank you. I think that's what we all needed. So, Mrs. Pearl Bäni, thank you so much for being in my show.
Yes.
And I hope we will cross each other again on the street.
I hope so.
Yeah, thank
this
you
is
so
fantastic.
much for being here. Thank you.
Mary, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
You want a real happiness.